All right, so now that we have our zeros and our vertical asymptote on our number line, let's go ahead and take a look at the graph and the table to determine the intervals where the graph is above the x-axis or below the x-axis. Keep in mind, if you don't have a newer calculator where you can do fractions, make sure you have a double set of parentheses around the numerator and make sure your denominator is in parentheses as well. So if I hit graph, here's what I'm seeing. Remember, -2 is where your graph may change directions. +3 is where your graph may change directions. And then there's a vertical asymptote at 4. And so using the graph, I can see that if I pick a number smaller than -2, like if I go over here on the number line, my graph is below me. So there's a negative interval. If I pick a section or pick an interval, pick a number on the interval between -2 and +3, I can see that on that interval, the graph is actually above the x-axis. So I've labeled that positive. If I pick a number bigger than 3, that interval is negative. And then finally, on my graph, I don't see anything. But if I double check my table, remember sometimes it's a good idea to use your table and use your graph together. If I pick a number bigger than 4, I see that the y value is also positive. It's a number bigger than 4, even though it wasn't on my graph because it was above 10. I can see it's positive. Remember too, I know we've already taken a look at the zeros in the previous part of the video, but remember you can also find zeros by looking at your table. And so right there, when x is 3, there was one of my zeros. If I keep scrolling to -2, there's a 0 as well. So I can find them that way. So anyway, I've determined my intervals where my graph is positive or negative. To finish this problem then, I was asked to determine where this rational function was greater than or equal to 0. In other words, where the graph is positive. Well, between -2 and 3, that interval was positive. And because I could be equal to 0, I used brackets. That equal to bar means brackets are okay. There's also a section where if I'm bigger than 4, I'm also positive. So notice from 4 to infinity is my other interval where the graph is positive. But notice at 4, I used a parentheses because even though I'm allowed to be equal to 0, plugging in 4 for x is not okay, because if I make x 4, I'd be dividing by 0, and that can't happen. So that's why I said before, make sure you make a big note in your number line about how 4 is actually a vertical asymptote. No matter what, I can't touch that. So there are the two intervals where the graph is positive.